Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are having a discussion on how Nintendo can save their 2024 with this upcoming June Direct. Now you might be wondering, what do you mean by saving? Nintendo's doing so well right now, they're in no need of saving. Well, from a certain perspective, that's absolutely true. They're doing totally fine. But when you look at their recent sales, when you consider their current lineup of games, what we don't know about for this year, and how reports are indicating that Switch 2 won't be coming out until March 2025 at the earliest it seems, the rest of this fiscal year, for some, seems to be grim. But I think there's a decent chance that things can be turned around a fair bit with this upcoming Direct, and that's what I would like to talk more about today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So in terms of sales numbers, Switch sales are down 69% year over year for the month of April. That is a pretty big drop off. But when you think about why the sales may have dropped off and what was going on during the month of April in 2023, it kind of makes sense. Back then, during that period of time, we were enjoying the Mario movie. That movie was boosting overall sales at Nintendo, especially when it came to Mario game sales, so of course that was helping things out a lot. But then also, there was the hype and excitement for Tears of the Kingdom that was coming out in May. But of course, we also had the Tears of the Kingdom OLED edition that came out beforehand, and that was helping out with sales as well. So that was a very good time for Nintendo. And in comparison this year, there's nothing like the Mario movie, there's nothing like Tears of the Kingdom, nothing close, and no one's really anticipating anything to that level. So 2024 doesn't really seem to have a chance to compete with 2023. And maybe that's not that big of a deal. Maybe there's just going to be one year where things are fairly down before Nintendo moves on to the next generation. But Nintendo is actually estimating that they are going to sell 13.5 million Switches by the end of their fiscal year. And so far, not so good. Those numbers are only a little bit worse than the year prior. Sales have been trending down year by year, and they don't have anything major like last year to really push those sales, at least that hasn't been announced yet. And considering what we've gotten this year so far, another Code Recollection, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, remakes and remasters, Princess Peach Showtime didn't really seem to move things up too much, Endless Ocean Luminous was kind of a flop, at least from a critical acclaim perspective, but maybe they never really had high expectations for it to begin with. Paper Mario Thousand Year Door has actually come out to some pretty favorable reviews. It's at least the most quality game that's come out this year from Nintendo, and perhaps it will see some decent sales. But at the end of the day, this is just a remake of a GameCube game of a franchise that isn't that big of a seller. It may sell a few million, and I hope it does. But even if Thousand Year Door becomes the best-selling game ever in the series, that's still not going to come close to pushing sales overall to help out Nintendo in terms of reaching their targets. Thousand Year Door is likely not a huge system seller. And Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and the Nintendo World Championships NES Edition are likely not going to do much better, more likely I would say worse. So all of the Nintendo announcements between January and July of this year don't look like they're going to move the needle that much. And we haven't even gotten a single General Direct this year. Now we know that a General Direct is coming sometime in June. And actually, interestingly, there may be some hints here that it could be coming sooner than later. I've personally been predicting the 12th because that would be after Summer Games Fest, it will be after all the other video game events as Nintendo likes to do things, and it would fall on a Wednesday during a full week of the month, which is typically when Nintendo does do their directs. Of course, it could happen a bit later, maybe the 19th for example. However, it looks like Nintendo has announced their Summer Play event for this year. They announced it recently, yesterday. And what's interesting about this is that last year when they announced their Summer Play event, last year was on the 14th, a week later, the Direct happened on the 21st, the Summer Direct. So could it be that about a week later after the announcement for this Summer Play event, we could be getting the next Direct, perhaps on the 11th or the 12th, as I've been thinking? Perhaps. Regardless, we know that we're getting a Direct in June. Nintendo's already confirmed that to us. At some point this month, we're going to get the event. So what could happen with this event that could help to save this year of 2024? Well, the first big announcement that comes to mind to me that will definitely move the needle here would be a Zelda announcement. Now at this point, I am thinking we are going to have an announcement for a new 2D Zelda game. Maybe it will be something else, but I do think this would make the biggest difference. For starters, it would be a new Nintendo game, not a remaster, not a remake, a brand new title. And with a brand new title, not only does that bring with it more sales potential, and potentially a special OLED edition or something like that that can push hardware sales as well, but because it's a new game with new story and details to dissect and discuss, there will be more theories. And that word of mouth on this game, and thus other Nintendo related things, will be boosted a fair bit more, which will in turn impact sales overall throughout the year. Now, as I said earlier, we don't know if we're getting a 2D Zelda game. It could be something else, maybe not even Zelda related. But in most years, we have something Zelda related. The only exception during the Switch era has been 2022, and that was because Tears of the Kingdom was delayed. It came out in the first half of the following year. And at this point, we are more than a year removed from Tears of the Kingdom. So as Nintendo's holiday title, a 2D Zelda, a year and a half removed from their prior Zelda release, I don't really think that's a stretch in any way, especially when Nintendo needs something major to push sales here, and we're running out of options. We also have to remind ourselves that Nintendo is getting ready for their next generation. We're expecting this console to come out next year. And so most of Nintendo's big projects, their big teams, they're focused on next-gen development already. That's in large part why we're mostly seeing just remakes and remasters. So something like a new 2D Zelda game is not going to have fans really thinking that they would have wished they waited till Switch 2 to play it, but also it's going to have a lot of people engaged and invested in the release for this year on Switch 1. And really I think this is probably going to be the biggest release of 2024. Of course, that's just my own speculation. There are many that think that Prime 4 is coming out this year. I've been divided on this. I've been split between either it's a holiday title or it's coming out sometime next year as a cross-gen title for Switch 2. And I've been leading in the cross-gen direction, but maybe this game comes out. But as many people have brought up over the years when it comes to conversation on Metroid's not nearly as big of a seller as something like Mario, Zelda, Splatoon, Pokemon. So even if Prime 4 does come out this year, it perhaps won't be something that moves the needle enough to really help Nintendo's sales overall. I do believe in Prime 4. I do believe this is going to be a new high for this series, and I do think it will bring in some pretty solid sales. But I also do believe that part of its success will be on showcasing better hardware, so that's why I'm personally not predicting Prime 4 to be coming out this year, but it definitely is an option for Nintendo to put up this year to help bolster the lineup. Now, something that's making this year perhaps a bit more challenging is that it doesn't look like we're getting a mainline Pokemon release. They announced Pokemon Legends ZA in the beginning of the year, and they made no mention of any other Pokemon game. And here we are at the beginning of June with no signs for anything else. They could maybe announce another mainline release in this upcoming Direct, or perhaps they will announce a Presents soon. But at this point, it's kind of looking like we're not going to have a mainline Pokemon release for this year, no sort of remake or anything like that. And so there won't be one of those 10 to 15 plus million selling Pokemon games. And that's definitely going to hurt Nintendo as well. So with no Pokemon, no other major releases outside of maybe something Zelda and Metroid, how can Nintendo save their 2024? Well, of course, perhaps there could be some surprise announcements we don't see coming. Maybe we see a new Donkey Kong game, maybe there's a new Star Fox game. These would be amazing. Would they be enough to push sales to the point where they hit their targets? I'm not so sure, but I'm sure there could be some surprise announcements here fitted in between some remakes and remasters that make the overall year pretty fun for fans. Honestly, if we get a new 2D Zelda, maybe a new Mario Party game as a lot of people are thinking, and then just some really high quality remakes and remasters, maybe for F-Zero, maybe for Star Fox, maybe Metroid Prime 2 and 3 as well, personally, I'd be pretty happy with that. But would that be enough? I think Mario Party would be a big deal, and we've discussed Mario Party making sense for this year in the past. So that could be another big seller, but they might need another one. Perhaps, while there may not be a mainline Pokemon release, there could be another spin-off title, and just because it's a spin-off doesn't mean it wouldn't be a huge seller. Pokemon is just a huge property overall, and if they have a high-quality spin-off, then it could probably be a pretty big deal. Say, for example, they were to announce a Pokemon Stadium 3. I bet that would be huge. I'm not predicting that just for the record, but I'm just saying, I think it would do pretty well. Now, something I did predict, but there isn't like a lot of substantial evidence for it, just beyond it making sense for pushing sales and fan demand, would be a remaster of Tomodachi Life. You see, Miitopia actually did pretty darn well on Nintendo Switch when it was remastered from the 3DS version. Tomodachi Life was an even bigger deal, so perhaps if they were to remaster this game on Switch, it would also go over really well for fans, especially because it's another one of those games that you don't really need a Switch 2 to showcase here. So maybe Nintendo has something like that they're hiding that can help to bolster their lineup in terms of a sales perspective. And that's pretty much how I think Nintendo could use their Direct to save 2024. I do also think that we are going to see some price drops this year. Maybe they make mention of them in the Direct. I'm not thinking so because I have a hard time of remembering a time where they've done something like that. Of course, throughout the entire Switch era, they haven't had any real significant price drops. They've had sales discounts on the eShop, but not really any permanent price drops. So with all the different Nintendo games that have been going out of print lately, could it be that maybe they might be about to announce a Nintendo Selects line where a whole bunch of Nintendo games are now going to be $20 or $30 as opposed to the $50 or $60 bin throughout this entire Switch era? I think that would make a big difference, especially if they also finally announce a significant price drop for the Nintendo Switch. There hasn't been one this entire era, which is unprecedented for Nintendo. Typically, you see multiple price drops throughout a generation, and here we are in the waning periods where people thought we would have already moved on to new hardware already, and there still hasn't been a price drop. We know Nintendo is gearing up to give us some serious news about Switch 2 relatively soon. So perhaps by that point, before the holidays, they announce these price drops. Perhaps they will make mention of them in a Direct. I would say most likely not. But between the announcements we could see in this June Direct and a price drop for the different Switch models and for their games, I think this could do a lot to help to save 2024. Will 2024 go down as the best year in Nintendo history? No. And it's probably still going to go down as one of the lesser years of the Switch era. But it still might be solid enough to keep Nintendo fans engaged and facilitate a solid transition into the next generation, hopefully early next year. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.